The bag of gold. I am an old man now, but I still remember that day as if it happened yesterday. I was young and very poor. My life was hard and every day was a struggle. I worked long hours, carrying heavy loads, but I earned very little money. My small house had cracks in the walls, and the roof leaked when it rained. My clothes were torn, and my shoes had holes. I often went to bed hungry. One morning I walked to the market. The sun was shining and the streets were busy with people, but my heart was heavy. I had only a few coins in my pocket. I wanted to buy food, but I knew it wouldn't be enough. As I walked along the dusty road, something caught my eye. It was a bag lying in the dirt. At first I thought it was empty, but when I picked it up, I felt something heavy inside. I opened the bag with shaking hands and looked inside. My heart stopped. The bag was full of gold coins and shiny jewels. I had never seen so much wealth in my life. For a moment I stood there, unable to move. My thoughts raced. I thought about all the things I could do with the money. I could buy a new house, warm clothes, and enough food to last for years. I could finally live without fear of hunger or cold. But then another thought came to my mind. Someone had lost this bag. Someone, somewhere, must be crying because they had lost something so valuable. My joy turned into confusion. My hands felt heavy as I held the bag. I walked home slowly, holding the bag close to me. My small, broken house came into view. I sat down at the wooden table, placed the bag in front of me, and stared at it. My mind was full of questions. Should I keep the bag? If I kept it, my life would change forever. But if I kept it, would I ever feel happy knowing it wasn't mine? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling with the bag next to me. I thought about my life, my struggles, and my dreams. But I also thought about the owner of the bag. Who were they? Were they rich or poor? Did they have a family depending on them? The more I thought, the more my heart ached. I wanted to do the right thing, but I didn't know if I had the strength to let go of the bag. It felt like the hardest decision of my life. The next morning, I woke up early. The bag of gold was still on the table. I stared at it for a long time. My heart was heavy, and my mind was full of questions. I thought about all the things I could do with the money. I could buy a warm coat for the winter. I could fix my broken house. I could finally live a better life. But then, I thought about the person who had lost it. Maybe it was a father who needed the money to feed his children. Maybe it was a poor woman saving for her family. I felt torn between my own needs and doing the right thing. I decided to take a walk to clear my mind. The streets were busy with people. I looked at their faces, wondering if any of them had lost the bag. I wanted to ask, but I didn't know how. What if someone lied and pretended it was theirs? As I walked, I passed by a large house. It belonged to a rich merchant in the village. The house was big and beautiful, with tall gates and clean windows. For a moment I thought, this man doesn't need more money. Maybe the bag belongs to him, but would he even care if he lost it? I continued walking and saw a poor woman sitting on the side of the road. She was holding a baby, and her clothes were old and dirty. She looked tired and hungry. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. I thought, if I keep the bag, I could help people like her. But if I return it, what will happen to my own life? When I got home, I sat down at the table again. The bag of gold seemed to stare back at me. I opened it and looked at the shiny coins. They looked so beautiful, but they also felt so heavy. I thought about my mother's words when I was a child. She always told me, honesty is the most important thing. Without it, we lose who we are. Her words echoed in my mind. I didn't want to lose who I was, but I also didn't want to live in poverty forever. I closed the bag and placed it back on the table. I still didn't know what to do. That night I barely slept. My dreams were full of questions. I saw the faces of my family, my neighbors, and strangers. Some were happy and some were sad. When I woke up, I knew I had to make a decision. But what would it be? The next morning I decided to take action. I couldn't sit and wait anymore. I needed to find the owner of the bag. I picked it up and held it close to my chest. It felt heavy, not just because of the gold, but because of the weight of my decision. I walked to the village square where many people gathered every day. There were merchants selling fruits, bread, and clothes. Children were running and laughing, and old men sat on benches talking. I stood in the middle of the square and took a deep breath. "Did anyone lose a bag of gold?" I asked loudly. My voice trembled, but I tried to stay strong. People stopped and looked at me. Some seemed surprised and others looked confused. One man came forward. He was tall and wore fine clothes. He looked at the bag and said, "That must be mine. I lost some money yesterday." But something about his eyes didn't seem right. He didn't look worried or sad. He only looked greedy. I shook my head and said, "Can you describe what was inside the bag?" The man hesitated. He couldn't answer. "Maybe it's not mine," he muttered, and walked away. My heart felt relieved, but I also felt more cautious. An old woman came up to me next. Her hands were shaking and she looked tired. "Did you find my bag?" she asked softly. My heart ached for her, but when I asked her what was inside, she couldn't give me the right answer. I realized she was only hoping, not lying. I spent the whole day in the square, asking and listening. Many people came to me, but none of them could describe the bag correctly. Some were honest, and some were not. As the sun began to set, I felt tired and frustrated. Had I made a mistake by trying to find the owner? I walked back home, carrying the bag. My legs felt heavy, and my heart was full of doubt. I thought about the people I had met. Some were kind, but others only wanted the gold for themselves. How could I be sure who the real owner was? When I got home, I sat at the table once more. The bag of gold was still with me. I thought about my life, my struggles, and my dreams. I had tried to do the right thing, but I still didn't have an answer. That night, I prayed for guidance. I needed a sign to help me make the final decision. The next morning, I woke up feeling more determined. I couldn't give up. I had to keep looking for the owner of the bag. If I kept the gold, I would never have peace in my heart. I got dressed, picked up the bag, and went back to the village square. This time I decided to talk to people one by one. I went to the bakery first. The baker was a kind man with a friendly smile. When I asked him about the bag, he shook his head. "I didn't lose anything," he said, "but it's good that you're trying to find the owner." His words gave me a little hope. Next, I visited the blacksmith. He was a strong man with big hands. He listened to my story and said, "If you can't find the owner, maybe it's a gift from God. Maybe it's meant to help you." I nodded, but I wasn't sure if I believed him. I spent hours walking around the village, talking to everyone I met. Some people were curious about the bag. Others didn't seem to care. A few even laughed at me and said, "Why don't you just keep it? No one will know." Their words made me feel sad. As the day went on, I started to lose hope. Maybe I would never find the owner. Maybe the bag would remain a mystery forever. I sat on a bench in the square, holding the bag tightly. I looked around at the people in the village. Everyone seemed busy with their own lives. Just as I was about to give up, a young boy came running toward me. He looked scared and out of breath. "Mister, did you find a bag?" he asked. His voice was small, but his eyes were wide with worry. I looked at the boy carefully. He didn't seem rich, but he didn't look poor either. I asked him what was inside the bag. The boy described everything perfectly: the gold coins, the jewels, and even the small tear on the side of the bag. My heart started to race. Could he be the real owner? "Where did you lose it?" I asked. The boy explained that his father had dropped the bag on the way to the market. It was his family's savings, everything they had worked for. I could see the fear in his eyes. He was afraid of going home empty-handed. I handed the bag to the boy. His face lit up with relief and joy. "Thank you, sir," he said. "You don't know how much this means to us." He ran off, holding the bag close to his chest. I watched him disappear into the crowd. That night, I sat alone in my small house. I didn't have gold or jewels, but my heart felt light. I had done the right thing, and that was worth more than any treasure. After the boy left with the bag, I sat on the bench for a long time. The village square was quiet now, and the sun was setting. I watched the sky turn orange and pink, thinking about what had just happened. For the first time in days, I felt a sense of peace. When I returned home, my small, broken house didn't seem as empty as before. It was still cold, and the roof still leaked, but my heart was warm. I thought about the boy's face when I gave him the bag. His smile reminded me of something my mother once told me. Kindness always comes back to you, even when you least expect it. That night, I slept better than I had in years. My dreams were calm, and my mind was clear. When I woke up the next morning, I felt different. The weight I had been carrying was gone. I didn't have gold or jewels, but I had something even more valuable: a clean heart and a clear conscience. As the days went by, life returned to normal. I went back to working small jobs in the village, earning just enough to survive. People in the village started to hear about what I had done. Some praised me, saying I was an honest man. Others said I was foolish for giving up such a fortune. One afternoon, the baker came to me with a loaf of bread. "This is for you," he said. You did something most people wouldn't do. You should be proud of yourself." I thanked him and felt my eyes fill with tears. The bread was simple, but it meant so much to me. Another day, the blacksmith offered to fix the roof of my house. "You're a good man," he said. "Good things will come your way." I accepted his help, and for the first time in years, my house felt warm and safe. The kindness of the villagers surprised me. I didn't return the bag to gain anything, but their small acts of generosity made my life a little easier. I realized that honesty and kindness had a way of spreading, like ripples in a pond. One evening, as I walked home, I saw the boy again. He was standing with his father near the market. When he saw me, he ran over and said, "Sir, my father wants to thank you." The man came forward, holding a small box. "We don't have much," he said, "but we want you to have this." I opened the box and found a beautiful handmade scarf inside. It was simple, but warm, and I knew it had taken time and effort to make. I held it close and said, "Thank you. This means more to me than you know." As I walked home with the scarf, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Life was still hard, but I knew I wasn't alone. The love and kindness of others reminded me that even in difficult times, there is always something to be thankful for. Years have passed since that day, but I still think about it often. I remember the weight of the bag in my hands and the difficult decision I had to make. Looking back, I realized that giving the bag back was one of the most important moments of my life. Life didn't suddenly become easy after that. I still worked long hours, and there were days when I felt tired and hungry, but something had changed inside me. I carried a sense of pride and peace that no amount of gold could ever buy. The villagers continued to show me kindness. The blacksmith repaired my roof, the baker gave me bread when I needed it, and the teacher offered me books to read. Their small acts of generosity made my life brighter, and I learned that good deeds truly come back to you. One day, many years later, I saw the boy again. He was no longer a child, but a grown man. He stood tall and confident, and he wore a bright smile on his face. When he saw me, he ran over and said, "Sir, I've been looking for you." He told me that his family had used the gold to rebuild their lives. They had opened a small shop and worked hard to create a better future. "We would have lost everything if you hadn't returned the bag," he said. "You've saved us." Tears filled my eyes as he spoke. I hadn't realized just how much my decision had meant to them. It wasn't easy to give it back, I admitted, but it was the right thing to do. The man smiled and said, "You taught me something I will never forget. Kindness and honesty are worth more than gold." He handed me a small package and said, "This is for you." I opened the package and found a beautifully carved wooden box inside. It was simple yet elegant, and inside was a note. The note read, "Thank you for your kindness. Your actions changed our lives." That evening I sat by the fire in my small house holding the box. I thought about my life, my struggles, and the choices I had made. I may not have been rich in money, but I was rich in something far more important: love, honesty, and the connections I had with others. Now, as an old man, I often tell this story to my grandchildren. I want them to know that life is not about how much money you have. It's about the choices you make, the kindness you show, and the honesty you carry in your heart. The bag of gold could have changed my life, but returning it gave me something much greater, peace of mind and a legacy of doing what is right.